For this tale, I have chosen her best friend's father as my anchor. I am Elena, 39 years old, a landscape designer who loves the smell of pine and rain on warm sidewalks. And I am about to stumble into a place I never meant to go. That summer, I moved into the guest house behind my best friend's family home to mend a life that had started to feel brittle around the edges, and to learn to breathe again after a chapter that had torn through me. I had believed I was steady, the kind of woman who did not break, who could weather a storm with a calm voice and a steady hand. But the moment Marcus appeared in the doorway one humid evening, with his shirt sleeves rolled and a kindness that felt like rain, the ground moved. He was a father I had watched from afar for years, a man with laughter lines that told stories, and a voice that could calm a room just by speaking my name. The air between us did not shout or bloom at once. It crept in through the corners of the kitchen, a soft ache that I tried to name as nothing more than old fatigue. I was there to reclaim a life I had almost lost, to rebuild trust in myself, to remember who I could be when the world did not demand perfection from me. My days were filled with the careful rhythm of watering cans, soil under fingernails, and the precise notes I made for a garden that would outlive any quarrel I carried inside. My nights, however, carried the tremor of a different kind of care, the sense that perhaps someone else could see the parts of me that I had buried under routine and fear. What began as courtesy, Marcus offering a blanket after a thunderstorm, Marcus listening as I spoke of a heartbreak that did not quite feel finished, slowly shifted like the moon moving beneath a cloudy sky, until the light was no longer enough to pretend I did not see what I wanted to pretend I did not hear. He was careful, always respectful, never crossing a line that would endanger a family I respected and loved. And yet there was a charge in the way his hand lingered when he handed me a mug of tea, a brush of skin at the edge of the kitchen island when we reached for the same salt shaker, a look that held a map of routes I had promised myself I would never walk again. The stability of my life, my steady paycheck, the small joy of daily routines, the deep love I still had for the quiet rhythm of a long friendship with Anna, began to feel like a wall I could not breathe through. I had married young, seeking safety, and while that choice had given me a solid life in many ways, it had also left me with a residue of longing that I mistook for loneliness. When I woke to the scent of coffee in the guest house and the sound of Marcus's voice in the hall, the old ache swelled and then softened into a current I could not ignore. I found myself listening to the soft rustle of his laundry on the line, tasting the sweetness of apricot in the air as he spoke about his daughter, about the garden they shared, about the way a man must learn to forgive himself before forgiving others. The first time our eyes met and did not look away, I felt a pull I had believed was simply my imagination, a trick of long evenings and too much sighing. The truth was simpler and more dangerous. I wanted him. Not as a conquest, but as a second chance at a life I had once believed beyond reach. The days grew lighter, the air thinner, and the small acts of care we offered each other began to feel like promises. Promises we pretended not to name aloud, even though they echoed between us as surely as the rain. The inciting moment came on a night when a storm rattled the windows and the house seemed to breathe with us in the darkness. I stood on the back porch with a mug of cooling tea, listening to the wind carry 1,000 unseen pings of rain against the metal gutters. Marcus appeared at my side, not touching, yet his presence brushed my cheek with a heat I could not deny. He spoke of the storm, of the way nature forgives and erases, and I heard the old language of longing in his voice, a language I had believed I would forget. We stood close enough to count the dust motes in the air, And then a wind gust pressed us together, an unspoken invitation that frightened me and also felt incredibly right. In that moment, I dropped my gaze to his hands, to the rough edges of a man who had learned to be careful with his own heart after years of weathering storms. If I had crossed a line that night, it would not have been with a kiss placed on my lips, but with a choice in my chest to listen to what I truly wanted instead of what I believed I should want. The choice I made was to stay, to listen, to resist the urge to erase the boundary completely, and to accept that the boundary existed for tenderness to flourish without harm. If you had asked me then what I would do next, I would have whispered a dozen excuses and then admitted that my breath hitching every time he spoke my name was not an accident. Rising action grew from the small, dangerous, beautiful realities of near moments and near truths. We found ourselves standing in the garden at dusk, the scent of blooming lilacs thick around us, the world narrowing to the quiet sounds of our shared breathing and the distant hum of a fan in the guest house window. We talked about loss, mine, his, our shared fear of what a love that began behind a closed door could cost the people we valued most. He spoke gently about his daughter, about the patience she deserved, about the way he had learned to protect his heart as if it were a fragile seed that needed regular rain and sunlight. I spoke of a marriage that had dissolved, not because of betrayal from him, but because of my own longing for a truth I could not admit aloud. We walked the line of honesty, sometimes stepping toward it, sometimes stepping back into the safety of polite distance. And with every step, I felt the old ache morph into something more hopeful, something that did not require secrecy, but did require courage. Then one night, after a long, quiet dinner and a shared glass of red that warmed our cheeks more than the room, I reached for a truth I had kept hidden, even from myself. I wanted to be seen by him in a way no one else had ever seen me, to be known as more. If this confession has you on the edge of your seat, hit like and share because you will not believe what happens next. The air shifted then, and his eyes held mine with a gravity I'd learned to fear and a tenderness I'd forgotten existed in the world. He did not promise a future in that moment, but he named a possibility, a road that would require us to carry the weight of our truth with care and to protect what mattered most, our friends, our families, and the fragile love we were learning to trust. The rise of consequence followed. Anna, my best friend, learned of our closeness in a way that felt like a sudden winter storm, unwelcome, unsettling, and real. We talked honestly, not with the heat of accusation, but with the heavy quiet of grown people who care about the sanctity of a shared life. We spoke of boundaries, of how far a second chance could go without breaking a vow of friendship, of whether a risk taken for love could ever be a gift to someone else if done with consent, honesty, and thoughtful timing. In the end, we did not pretend that the temptation evaporated. We chose to weather it with respect and patience, to let the garden of our possibilities grow slowly, roots taking hold while summer insisted on a blaze of color. Months passed, and the space between us filled with cautious smiles, careful glances, and the deepening sense that perhaps the best love is not the loudest, but the most honest. The second chance did not arrive with a loud fanfare or a dramatic confession before a crowd, but with a quiet invitation to try again only when it could be done with care for all the hearts involved, and with the promise that some doors must remain protected until they are ready to be opened in truth. The future feels like a garden at dawn, unseen but not unreal, a path that may hold us together if we choose to walk it slowly, with honesty as our compass and mercy as our guide. I will hold my breath a little longer and keep tending the soil of this new tenderness, because if love is a risk, it is a risk I wish to take again, with eyes open and hands ready to heal what fear has broken. Hashtags line my thoughts like stepping stones. Emotional storytelling, forbidden love.